Okay. Will the meeting come to order? This is the Environmental Advisory Committee on Thursday, February 10th, 2022. We acknowledge that the press and the public have been duly notified of the meeting in accordance with the Freedom of Information Act. And all members are present. Right, good. Yeah, Deb. Oh, Deb. All members except Deb Ferris are present. First order of business is approval of the previous meeting's minutes. I believe that the city clerk has made a couple of adjustments.
I will.
To the.
I want to make sure that I did. If there was anything else, I'll do it all.
Yeah. Are there any additions or corrections to the minutes that we have received published? I don't think there are. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
I move to approve.
As is there a second? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
All right. All right, citizens' comments. We have Diane Troy, who is a member of the Island Turtle Team. She lives in Wild Dunes, and she has really been working hard with Audubon with the Shorebird project. Anything else that I'm leaving out, Diane?
No, that's it. Thank you so much for letting me speak today. I really appreciate it. And I am just in awe of all of you for sharing your time and expertise on this committee. I just think it's so needed right now. And I was kind of giddy when I found out that they were, I was like, oh, they're going to have an environmental committee. So thank you all very, very much. I really just wanted to stop by today and drop off some information that might help y'all understand what's going on the beach and let you know that we have organizations like South Carolina DNR, South Carolina Audubon that have resources and are willing to help educate and increase awareness for our community and especially for our town council and services that are actually really greatly needed right now out on the beach. We have, if you don't know, we've had lease turn and Wilson plover nesting on the beach. And you may or may not know because they're not usually successful, but last year we actually had a really successful year. And it was 100% due to the fact that we had a huge community involvement that helped to make it work. We had help from DNR, from South Carolina Audubon, but we also had help from the community. This was located down in Wild Dunes, this location, and we had communities right there that helped us. We had to block off a certain area just to keep the activity from walking through the nesting area. And it was very successful. We ended up doing much better than they were doing on the rooftops. They still try to do that, but we're trying to close them all off now so that
was because of predators, aerial predators.
yeah, it's kind of like a fast food restaurant.
Yeah.
There. Yeah, it's not a good place for them, but it's not an ideal situation, trust me. So but they are losing their habitat. And because of the loss of habitat, they are both the Wilson's plover and the least tern are both listed as threatened and protected in South Carolina. And they're both protected under the Migratory Bird Treaty Act. So these are important birds that we need to be working to help get through their nesting season. But it's just not as easy as just saying, okay, we need to teach our services so that they know not to drive through the nesting site. We need to let our communities know what's going on, because honestly, if I didn't have my turtle team a t-shirt on, people would not even stop and listen to me. But because we had shorebird stewards out there, which is a program from South Carolina Audubon, to stop and explain things to the beachgoers, a lot of times they wouldn't have stopped just for me. It was because I had my Turtle Team t-shirt on, which is always good. So I was kind of like Turtle Team and advocate, and I was helping, helping for the birds. But anyway, I just want to drop this off and let you all know it's really important, and they definitely need help. Just the fact that they had a successful season last year means that they are able to do it here on our beaches. They just need to have some assistance from us. So, and we have, I did want to mention one more thing. Before COVID hit, I had set up a shorebird steward training with Nolan from South Carolina Audubon out at our the rec center, but because of COVID, we had to cancel all that. But ideally, South Carolina Audubon wants to come out and either have a info session with y'all and also like beach services, the police department, whoever you feel need and needs to have this kind of information. They're willing to come out and do that. And they're also willing to offer these seminars or trainings out at the rec center. So just if you guys wouldn't mind looking into that, these brochures will give you a link right to South Carolina Audubon, but you're also, you're always welcome to give me a call too, and I'll let you know what's going on too. All righty. Do you have any questions?
Question.
Yes.
Doug Hatley.
Hi, Doug.
In the pamphlet, does it talk about what the habitat is?
Yeah, I can, yes, it does. And if you go to South Carolina Audubon / I think it's coastal birds, there's so much information on there. South Carolina DNR has it. US Fish and Wildlife has it. So there's a lot of information out there. It's just that it's not accessible to everyone, unless you go looking for it. But this does have stuff in it. And I can tell you right now, one of the reasons why they're struggling is because they are, least terns are seabirds. So they come in around mid-May to start nesting. And they nest right on the beach, like right in an open little bitty nook in the beach. They just dig they go like this and just dig a little hole and nest in there. And no one, you can't even see the eggs. So unless they're protected, they're going to be destroyed. Plus, they really are susceptible to being scared off by humans and anyone else. So, and they nest in colonies. That's good information for you.
Okay.
Yeah.
And some of it will be on the card.
Yeah, I don't want to sit here and I don't even want to get started because there's so much
Don't get us
information.
started, Doug.
But I could send you a ton more, but I'm telling you, South Carolina Audubon is there for everyone to help get any information you might need.
Good.
All righty, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Can I leave these?
Please.
Please.
Yeah, you can.
If I do this,
Put
can
'em
you
there
pass
and-
it down?
Yeah.
Professionally? Go right ahead.
Calvin, leave one there for Debbie. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Diane.
My apologies.
All right, now we're all here. All right, moving on with the agenda. Old business, discussion of main priorities to pursue identified by the subcommittees. I'd like to say that what we're going to do, we are required to vote on each one of these items separately. And how we should proceed is to have the leader of each working group or someone in that working group to read one. We were asked to do 1 or 2 items that would be good for immediate action, that would be easy for council to achieve and vote on. So we wanted to keep it simple and get off to a really good start. We will have someone read, it's necessary to have someone read the first item and then another person to make a motion that we accept it and second the motion, and then we have the discussion. And we're supposed to limit speaking to 2 times per person as we go. And then we will vote on whether to amend it or accept it. Is that clear? Any questions?
I have a question, please. If this counts as one comment.
No, no, we haven't read anything.
Are we going to read the things that were distributed prior to the meeting?
Well,
Or
you
may
can
we-
follow along. with
can
what
we
have.
assume that everyone has already read what was distributed ahead of the meeting.
Does anyone need
They're
a
like 10
copy of
pages.
Well,
Is this for the purpose of recording,
a
for
recording?
for recording the meeting?
Yes, and just
Yeah.
to
Okay.
find out what each group sees
Yeah.
as its top priorities, it would be a good thing to present. Mhm.
Thank you.
All right.
I would just like to maybe clarify one thing. Council would only need to approve. Council would only really need to approve a policy change or an ordinance, if you need any code change, or whether there's any funding available. If there's items that don't require any of those things and you vote to, that those are things you want to take on, I think that you wouldn't need to go to council.
All right.
Is that your understanding as well?
Yeah,
Doug?
yes, if there's something that can be done quite readily at the staff level, it's not really a policy action or doesn't require
Or
money or an
change.
ordinance change.
Mhm.
If it's a matter of more patrolling or something like that,
Mhm.
that can probably be just handled at the staff level. So as we go through kind of each of these, we'll kind of identify
Mhm.
the proper course for that task.
All right. And we will see how many groups we can get through. We may have to table some of the groups to next time. We'll just see how it goes. All right. All right. Well, first on the agenda is water quality. Who would like to present an item for water quality?
Yeah, so just procedural, the immediate action items are listed above in the form. We have the overarching sort of priorities. So I don't know that do we want to read the full statement and all the overarching, or we want to focus on the actionable items that we're going to fight off?
Just, I would think the actionable.
Yes, because the
Short
overriding
list.
The other ones are aspirational.
Yes.
That's the idea.
That's not for
Right.
tonight.
Yes.
That'll
good.
be for
Okay,
later.
good. All right. Ideally, the staff goes away with 4 or 5 action items that we can work on to get implemented. That would be the ultimate goal for the meeting. Okay, so now, again, just procedurally, so just read one and then let someone else read, or we go through these?
Well, 1 or 2 from the water quality group is what we're looking for. We're
Okay.
going to do them separately, though.
Okay,
One, and then make a motion to accept it,
Okay.
and then,
so just a quick background. So our goal initially around the immediate things is to kind of seek to understand before we seek to be understood. So we were looking at what information and things that we need to look at to understand where the island is in terms of water quality, water supply. So first we say conduct a water quality audit, surface and well water, as well as intercoastal waterways. The intention there is to understand what do we have and what do we know about the water quality on the island? And then the second was related to the second was how is that tied into the drainage programs that are going on? So that we're not creating duplicative efforts here in terms of, what's happening with the drainage programs versus what we're trying to take a look at. And then ultimately the other major task in here was look at the ordinance and policies that we have and see, do they incorporate latest best practice for the types of things we want to be aspirational for in our overarching goals? So I don't know that we wrote them very specifically to say these are the actions, but the main thing right now is understand the water quality, the surface and well water and the water quality of the island. Something immediately, John and Phil.
Yeah, I was about to say, I think the very first item, not gonna read it out loud. I think that's a good starting point, because it does what you're talking about, setting the stage for
Yeah.
future action. So if maybe just read that out and we can make a
Yeah,
motion.
okay, so this first one says conduct a water quality audit of surface and well water as well as intercoastal waterways.
okay.
So that's that, and that, the second one I would say would be the third one, which is more of what we're trying to do. So we'll start with that one. So the idea is conduct a water quality audit of surface and well water as well as intercoastal water. So that's our first.
That's the
immediate
first
action.
one. Well, let's just
We'll
stop
there.
Stop there.
Procedure, just kind of getting through figuring this
And-
out. So-
All right. Is there a motion that we accept that?
I'll make a motion. Yes.
Melvin? All right. And Molly seconds. So now we can discuss one at a time. Whether we are going to leave it like it is or
Okay.
add to it or change it or whatever.
Yeah, so I think I've spoken enough. I've given you what the intention is. So let's turn it over to some of the other.
Any
folks.
other discussion? Jonathan?
I feel like Doug covered it, so I'd rather
Yeah.
open it up for people that might not be on the water committee to see if they had questions for clarification, because we talked about it amongst ourselves and sometimes it makes sense to us, but if somebody else is reading it, they might see something differently and have a question, so I'd rather. see
And
somebody
would
else's
council
question.
be asking, hiring somebody to do this? Or who would be doing the audit?
So Charleston Waterkeeper, I think would be a great partner in this, especially for the Intracoastal waterways. As far as the groundwater and well water, or surface rather, surface and well water, maybe Doug, you can have thoughts on.
Yeah, I mean, I've done this before. So what I think we would start with is identifying the literature that we have available, the information that's available to DHEC, to our local offices here, and try to just accumulate and see what we have. I think if we were going to ask the council for anything, it would probably be in the second step where we maybe do a gap analysis. And if we identify gaps in data, would we be recommending to go out and collect the data, or would we be asking for funds to go purchase sources of data that may require investment to get hold of, or maps or things that we don't have? So I think the first step is, and I'm willing to roll up my sleeves to do some of this, is just to start understanding what do we know about the water here, what information is readily available for free, and then do a gap analysis, and then come back at the second stage. Do we need support of funding or anything else to get to the next step?
Yeah,
John,
I mean, I work on the health side at DHEC, but on the environmental side, I mean, I know who the director of the Bureau of Water is. So I mean, I have no idea of where, their purview is the Bureau of Water. If this is surface water, well water, which of those things they touch. But, as far as DHEC involvement, I'd be happy to reach out and see what their recommendation would be as far as analysis for something like this as well.
Yeah, there's databases that are out, DHEC probably has, that we can get public access to. I'm not sure what data we have here at IOP, but that's what this is, information gathering. And the second step is identify whether we do need help from the council.
Well, is this something at this point that we would be sending to council? I mean,
Do we need to send it to council?
or just information for them to know that we're working on this?
So just a couple of comments on that priority, and for kind of the benefit of the group on some backstory of water quality and what the city has historically done and what's happened. It's probably now been 15, 20 years ago, the city got a grant to study the water quality in the ditches that were heading out to the waterways. They took water samples for about a year, analyzed that, looked at it, saw what the makeup was in those ditches. Then there was kind of a second phase of tracing the source of the bacteria back to a species. So there was a fair amount of work done through general engineering labs 20 years ago or so. That study has been tremendously helpful ever since it was done. To me personally, I think something like that, and it's a little bit different. It was kind of tailored towards looking at septic systems versus other quality issues. So that was done. We have that. We can kind of, I could certainly distribute it as just some background information of prior work. I do personally think that type of project done again is kind of a new stamp in time to see, if those were the benchmarks 20 years ago, are we roughly the same? Or are we different and potentially expanded? There was definitely money associated with that. So I think ultimately that would get to kind of a process of requesting for proposals from groups that do that type of work, and then ultimately making a request of city council to fund that. So to me, that would be, I think it kind of squarely fits in what you've
That's
described
an
there.
excellent example of what we want to do for the first step. What is the water and sewer have? If they have an NPDES permit, what do they have to
Yeah.
do for their water quality studies and those things?
The water and sewer did during COVID, I don't remember exactly when, but they did do a wastewater. But they checked wastewater.
Mhm.
They did that. And so they've done that recently, sometime in the last 2 years.
COVID.
They have, that, so they should have that information.
So that's exactly what the initial goal would be. And then, once we understand what we have and what we might, to refresh it
Right,
or to fill in gaps.
right.
Then that's where we would put together a plan that might go to the committee to say, this is what we think needs to be done. This is what we think it might cost. This is the amount of time we might think and the resources needed. Then I think it goes to the committee.
And in addition to that study that was done, and I guess it's DNR, is taking water quality checks periodically it's very few stations. There's kind of 3 stations on the backside of the Isle of Palms that are checked primarily for, whether or not shellfish harvesting is acceptable. We haven't had any kind of spikes in those monitoring efforts here recently, but it is another source of information. Again, it's very kind of sporadic and they're pretty far drawn out. We've never really been able to use those for any conclusive, information. It's kind of a watered down version, so to speak, of what the water keepers folks are doing. We have talked internally about kind of incorporating or approaching the water keepers group because it's definitely right in their wheelhouse. They've had some, they've created real challenges for communities. So, but I think the thought has always been if it's going to be a problem, be better to know that now and start working proactively to do that. But that could be seen as, kind of putting your neck out there without knowing what you might be getting yourselves into. So we'd want to do that cautiously, I guess. But I think they're all great ideas and certainly kind of in the city's interest to pursue that.
Is there any other discussion on the motion before we vote on that first one? Well, let's do by show of hands. All in favor of passing? Unanimous? Pick one more.
Well, I think the other one that would be helpful is to seek ways to improve water conservation, quality, resilience, sustainable practices and IRP ordinance and policies. And I think this would be another informational gathering session where, don't do it at night, early in the morning when you're drinking coffee. We'll actually go through the current ordinances and policies and just take a look and see, when's the last time, have they been looked at through the lens of what best practices are for sustainable infrastructure and some of these other things? Because, we talk about an example, permeable driveways. Well, have we put that into our building codes? It's, and should we? Those kind of things where we can identify things that could be put into the code and policy that once we do that, it's going to have an overall benefit to reach our aspirational goals. So again, it's another seek to understand where we are. And again, I can see that one leading eventually to, if we were going to do that, and incorporate those best practices, we might bring in a partner, an engineering consulting firm, or someone who's had a lot of experience helping craft best management practice plans or helping switching, reorganize ordinances or things to be able to incorporate them in. So those are the 2 guys. You okay with that? Okay.
So just to comment on that one, the city has engaged currently and they are actively working with Davis and Floyd is the engineering company that is developing a master drainage plan for the island. And part of what they are doing is analyzing our current ordinances, our current practices, and coming up with suggestions as to whether or not our existing and our kind of planned infrastructure will be adequate and should we implement more things to minimize the water getting into that storm system. I will say that their focus is very much quantity-based versus quality-based. So maybe it's a little bit different, but I think there's probably, and they're, you know, kind of 3 months into a year-long process. But if this is kind of an aspiration, it could certainly, I think, be dovetailed into that work that they're already doing. They're going to
Yeah.
come back with,
Yeah,
after they do the analysis, I think if we told them, hey, put the lens of, you know, wanting it to be a higher quality water as well as controlling quantity, I think that would be a useful kind of way to work towards that goal.
I think it's a good idea. I think, and again, I'll let Belvin and Jonathan weigh in too. But I think what I would like to ask, and maybe this is something to ask of the committee, is can we be a stakeholder in that project? Where we can be invited to maybe meetings or be able to read some of their reports and just be kind of consultative, informative. If you're familiar with the RACI, Responsible Accounting, that would be wonderful, because then I've done things like this professionally before. We could add value.
Yeah.
For IOP, and we could also extract more information back to help us in the first task. So I think that might need to be an ask of the committee, because they're funding that project. I'm sure that there's a project manager, Douglas,
Yes, so with Davis and Floyd,
but for us, who's like.
yes, I'm the
figured
kind
you
of
would
point
know.
of, yes, the point of contact, but that can just be done. I mean, I think they would, I can make that happen.
Yeah,
You know,
that'd
when
be
we
great.
get the initial kind of concepts back from them, when we start working on that. Right now, they're very much in that where the pipes are, what's the condition of the pipes. So that's kind of a later phase of their process, but you know, I can certainly kind of bring your group and their group together to interact.
Yeah, and we don't want to direct, we just want to observe. And
Yeah.
If we can offer any feedback or insights.
Can
Because when you look at drainage, there are the ways you address quantity can have an effect on quality, where you know, as you know, where you put riprap, where you put buffers, there's a lot of different things.
They have 3 monitoring stations on the island right now too, right?
Yes. Yeah, they're again monitoring for quantity. They're monitoring how much water is going through the system right now. They're not monitoring quality, but
Can I ask a question, Doug, and maybe this is also a little bit of a point of education too, trying to figure out these consultants, what they're looking at in terms of the infrastructure. There's gray infrastructure, which is, you know, like your gutters and how you kind of, you know, have the pipes moving stormwater. And then there's things like green infrastructure, you know, which is you're trying to look at ways that you can use landscaping to move stormwater. So it's not going into the sewers and out into the waterways, or having permeable driveway, which I know we built our house here 2 years ago. And I know that was part of the change. So we had to make our driveway permeable, all these hardscapes, which I think was, you know, a great move. But do you know if this consulting firm, Davis and Floyd, are they, is part of their ask and their task to consider green infrastructure?
no,
Okay.
I don't know. I would say it's not. That, you know, I will tell you that they are looking. Short answer is no. I could go down a rabbit hole about, you
Their
know,
focus is flooding, right? Their focus is facilitation, movement of water.
yes,
off
and
road,
the
so we can-
and the sizing of the infrastructure to get the necessary water out, basically.
But that could be an add-on that your committee takes on, is how to go back a step in the process and look at green
Yeah.
alternatives to stopping the water from getting there in the first place.
Yeah,
Right.
and it could be interesting, because there is an organization that certifies people in sustainable infrastructure. They could have a practitioner in their firm, or know a practitioner in their firm who has that capability, and they could ask them to come in through that lens and look at the project and make recommendations. If it's early enough, it would not incur significant change order and significant amount versus taking it at the end and then having to do everything all over again.
I think we needed a motion on this before we did all this
Yeah.
discussion.
But I actually sit on the EWWA Sustainable Infrastructure Committee, so. So we have a motion to.
Who would like to move
Yeah.
that we accept this
Sorry, the two.
third bullet point in the immediate quality goals
I'll
for
make a
water?
motion that we accept the third.
All right, and who would like to second?
I'll second.
Grace, all right. Now, any further discussion?
I almost think that our second bullet point could be subsumed a little bit under the third.
I agree.
It was just explicitly called out in the second one, but
Uh-huh.
I think. we can
Just
probably
by
read it.
adding another sentence to the
Yeah.
third one.
Take the bullet away and attach it.
Yeah, bring the second one down and
We can
attach it.
probably read it
you
all.
could just almost erase it, because if we're saying sustainable infrastructure, to me, a sustainable infrastructure, at least in part, is green infrastructure,
It is.
Mhm.
right?
Can we make a motion to amend?
Yes.
Okay, I'd like to make a motion to amend sustainable infrastructure, comma, green infrastructure, comma, and practices. Just adding the word green infrastructure in there.
That makes it fully inclusive.
Is there a second? to The motion to amend?
Second.
Linda, seconds. Well,
Look at us getting stuff
I
done.
think, all right, let's vote on it. I
So
think
you-
that's
you
good.
Vote on the motion to amend first. and then you
Let's
actually
vote on the
that.
motion to amend. Raise your hand if you approve the amendment. And now we vote on the
Motion as amended.
motion as amended. Thank you, Nicole. Unanimous. Very good.
We're gonna do 2 pages and put them in 2 votes.
All right, next on the agenda is the climate change.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you. Lot of good work.
All right, I'll just hop to it. So I'm making a motion to introduce bullet point 1 or number 1 under suggestions for immediate action, which is initiate a greenhouse gas audit using a program like ICLES to gain a basic sense of where the city's emissions are and enable a future metric-based climate action approach. So we had that presentation from Dr. Stuart Weinberg last meeting. And he discussed how the city of Charleston, in preparing for its climate action plan, subscribe to a service that ICLEI provides that makes it easy to gather climate data. I'm sure it's not the only program out there. And the possibility also exists of doing it without the program, using raw data is just more time consuming and perhaps difficult. But the idea behind this is getting the process going of the city implement climate friendly practices by gathering the metrics, by knowing where we're at on our greenhouse gas emissions or energy usage, et cetera.
Second, Doug? All right, further discussion?
I guess the one thing I would say is it is an intensive process. So Belvin, were we looking to bring a consultant in or someone? Or you
So
do this?
Stuart Weinberg is happy to help and assist and offer his expertise. My group, the Charleston Climate Coalition, is actually starting the process of looking into gathering more climate data. There's a tool that we've been looking at. So I would be happy to help significantly with the process. Well, one thing to remember is that when the city of Charleston did this, they had a sustainability director. They had Katie McCain, who's working with Stuart on this. So we do have to figure out who is going to be, a keystone of gathering this data. And part of the city's participation will be, for example, reaching out to Dominion and asking for data, using its position to gather what it can. But other measurements could be done by a third party, like people on this committee, Dr. Stuart Weinberg.
So just from my own understanding, would you expect there to be a cost with?
Yeah, so that's something we should talk through. ICLEI is apparently around $1,000 to use their program. So
Annually, once, monthly?
I believe it's a one-time fee. It's possible it's annual. I'll check on that. So if we were to decide to go forward with ICLEI, that would go to the council as an expense.
Having done greenhouse gas inventories for industrial, working with industrial sites, they can be quite intense and take quite a bit of time. You can buy the program, but Doug, you're probably familiar with this, but when you're using models, garbage in, garbage out. So I think this is a very important thing to do, But I do think we need to think about not doing it halfway. If we're gonna do it, do we have someone here or someone who can champion, as Galvin said, who has the skills and the foresight, the ability to put the time into it? Or do we go to the council and say, we think we need a consultant to help do this, that would cost us? I don't know if that's a good or bad thing,
Yeah.
but I think we need to think through that, because like you said, we don't want to go and put a model together, put all this together, present it, and then someone from the public that comes in as a greenhouse gas expert and tears us apart on it. Because as we all know, climate change is contentious. Not everybody believes in it, not everybody. So if you're going to put the numbers together, you got to make sure they're beyond reproach, especially if you're going to build any policy. That's just my experience of being a practitioner in that area.
So Belvin, what's your thoughts? What is your thought on whether or not so I could tell you I think I would speak for the city's behalf on saying that we don't have an expert and probably don't have, I mean, if it's a large, if it's a lot of time, it's not something that the city staff could absorb if it takes kind of any level of expertise or a high level of time dedication. Belvin, I think you're probably closest to it. I mean, do you feel, is that something that you would do, or how do you envision that would work?
Right. I mean, as you're discussing that, Doug, I was thinking about ways to simplify the audit. One thing I could do is I could talk with Stuart, look at what the city did, identify ways that could be stripped down as a starting point, get the most important piece of information, the most actionable piece of information, and come back on that.
So if you did it that way, it'd be sort of like we talked about with the water, 2 steps. First is see what we can do, and then determine if we need help. And then if we need help, come back with a specific request. So I think that's what you're doing. It's a great idea. We're gonna spread everybody out, so it's not always this side of the room is doing too much talking.
I have a question about the timeline. So what kind of timeline are we talking about to get actual ballot results that are not going to be?
It took the city, right? It took the city a year or two to put together. I mean, the process inherently has delays. You reach out to Dominion, they don't get back to you. You check in again, they don't get back to you. So that part of why I want to start this is because it is a time-consuming process. Because some of it is just letting the gears turn. Like fairly simple requests that take a while to come back.
We know that feeling.
Yeah. But it is a extended timeline. It's not in a month kind of thing.
We just need a vote. You did a motion and a second.
We did a motion in a second. All right. Discussion?
Can I just ask one, just for my education understanding? So what are the other three, what are the 3 main pieces? It's going to Dominion and figure out what is our, as an island, what's our energy consumption or like electrical grid? Do you count cars coming across the connector?
Yeah, so there's waste, there's transportation, there's energy usage, there's buildings. Those are probably 4 of the main dimensions to it. Some of it is data, some of it is just calculation based on population. Some of it you're taking, just existing data and using tools to translate that into what your average should be. So it just depends on which data point you're looking at.
Bill, and I have a question.
Yes.
So the purpose of the audit is I think generally what it's going to reveal as an outcome, right? So we're going to put time into measuring or creating a baseline of those, so then that you can tell 5 years or 10 years from now whether there's improvements been made.
It's to set a goal. What the city of Charleston did is they set the goal of a 58% emission reduction by 2030. And that would be pointless and meaningless if they didn't have the existing baseline to look at. And there were surprises when the city did their greenhouse gas audit compared to the last one, which was 2008. They saw a reduction in a few sectors they didn't expect. So it's not always obvious what you're going to find out with these things.
The question, has the city had a policy statement or had a point of view on climate change? Oh, I'm sorry. Just a general question. Has the city issued or does the city have a point of view or a policy statement around climate change?
Not that I'm aware of. You know, I think that there's been a lot of public statements about wanting to kind of be a community leader in environmental issues. I don't think though that there is really a adopted creed, so to speak, on the matter. I think they have frequently indicated that they have lofty aspirations and goals, but probably not much more than that.
And the reason I bring that up is if we do proceed with this, it will create some actionable data that the council will be confronted with. Are we going to set reduction goals? Are we going to do something with it? So I think it's important for them. They haven't come out with something that may be important for them to understand what the implications of doing this can be and whether they are interested in pursuing something like that. Get very political. There's a lot of sentiment.
Controversial.
And controversy is a better word. It could be very become. So you know, if you do it, okay, now what are we going to do? So I don't think we want to backdoor the council into something they're not.
Yeah, I get that. And I will tell you that the stormwater study that we talked about kind of was that way. It basically indicated that almost all of the bacteria going to the back was animal. And that, you know, if you sewered the island, you still would have roughly the same amount. So it was, while it was useful, it wasn't necessarily used to improve environmental conditions on the island. Having said that, so it wasn't really, I think, the ultimate use of that audit or study wasn't the intended use of it, but it was still very useful information to have. It still gets, you know, referred to frequently. But yeah, I think to your point, it might be good for the committee to know what actionable items could come out of that audit and try to think, is this a realistic or a feasible action item for the city? And quite honestly, I don't know enough to know like what is an example of something that came out of the city's process to know whether or not this council and this community would embrace it or not.
If I recall, Charleston went in eyes wide open. The city of Charleston wanted to do this, to embrace the.
Right. So I haven't read it out yet. But number 3, in terms of short-term actions, would be concerning the passage of a climate action resolution or a recognition of climate emergency to show a commitment to taking action on climate pollution. So a resolution passed by the council, basically making a public stance on IOP being a climate change recognizer and ideally leader. The town of James Island passed a resolution of this nature last year. It wasn't without controversy, but it passed, and you know, life went on. And also, Charleston County passed a climate action resolution last year. I think its language was largely very good. So there are 2 local models to look at. And I mean, if we as a committee are concerned about the council actually using a climate audit in the future, John, I don't know what the temperature is, or whether you know the temperature of council on a climate action resolution.
I don't.
Okay.
I can only give my own opinion, but I can't for council.
Right.
It'd be something we'd have to take to.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, we did say, because we were both participants in some subcommittee or 2. You know, one of the things that came up was, look just beyond the city of Charleston, because you're talking, this is an air base. Right? So having the surrounding communities have the same level of consciousness and desire to make improvements is important, because Charleston can do what it wants, but it's CO2 from IOP or vice versa, it doesn't work. So I think there is some appetite to behave more as an environmental entity, not jurisdictional entity.
Right. This is a slight digression, but I have personally been interested in talking with Sullivan's Island and Folly Beach, and maybe thinking when we talk about climate action in terms of sort of a coastal alliance.
Are we ready to vote on the number 1 under the immediate action on the climate change groups list?
I have one more question.
Yeah.
Number one, so we talked about, said it could take a year to two, depending, for a full-scale research project. Would it be valid to only look at, say, cars on the road? Because that's,
You-
my guess is a significant portion, right?
It is. It's, more of a quarter or a fifth than, the
Yeah.
majority of it, but it is possible to isolate different aspects
Yeah,
of climate action.
I don't know. I mean, I'm just trying to think of ways to.
Right. So
do something more quickly.
Like narrow the scope.
right. I think we're all thinking after Doug's comment of, okay, what's a way to,
I didn't mean to be a buzzkill.
no, it's a good
Important
point.
to do, but we just don't want to take on more than we can.
Well, I feel like, Belvin, there a minute ago, you suggested going back and talking to the doctor about kind of and giving thought to a streamlined process that gains kind of a majority of the information that hopefully they gained and reporting back on that.
Right.
Is that, to me, that made sense, and I would feel like that would be a good discussion to have at your next meeting after he's had a chance
I agree.
to do that.
Yeah. I can revoke my motion, right? Because I think I'd just like to do. Oh, you haven't voted. Yeah, I'll withdraw it. Yeah. I would like to actually to withdraw the motion and go back with a concern about scope and try to perhaps narrow it or clarify that.
All right. We don't have to vote on
No.
anything if he's withdrawing.
That's
All
correct.
right. All right. Anything?
I think it's clear, Belvin, though, I think everyone, at least I'll say I support it.
Oh,
I'm
absolutely.
not saying don't want to do it.
Right.
I
Yeah.
just want to say, let's make sure we do it in a way we can do it, have results.
No, I think we are on the same page.
Yes.
Okay.
Anything else from that group?
Yeah. So the one I mentioned before, I would actually like to put
Number
that forward.
3?
Number 3.
All right.
Consider the passage of a climate action resolution or a recognition of climate emergency to show a commitment to taking action on climate pollution. Like I said, there are 2 models, local models that the city could look at. And this would be a public facing thing. I mean, that's sort of the point of it. Is, ideally a little news is run on it. Ideally, you have some council members taking the opportunity to speak about why climate action matters. It's helpful because it sort of frames the position of the city, and it sets the stage for future action, much in the way that an audit would, just in more of a aspirational political direction.
All right. Shall we have a motion to adopt that? Number
So
3.
moved.
Linda? Okay. A second?
Second.
Debbie?
So just so I understand the motion, it is to consider passage. So my expectation would be if you vote in favor of that, a draft resolution would come back to this group to actually review and pass on. Is that correct? Is that what your thoughts are?
You say a draft resolution would come back to the group.
You would
Yes.
bring one back, and it sounds like there are good examples out
Yes.
there. And then the group would actually make a recommendation once they've reviewed it.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
And then we would send that to the council.
Yes.
Discussion, further discussion? All right, shall we vote on it then? Number 3. All in, yes, yes,
Yeah.
all in favor? Raise your hand. Okay. 10 minutes, should we start on the next
I
one?
know it's getting late.
Yeah.
I'm not going to be here next meeting. I'm going to be out of the country.
Oh.
And so I wanted to see if I might be able
Yeah.
to share what we came up with
Yeah, so you'd like to skip
with-
to.
with litter and waste,
litter and
if you
pollution.
guys don't mind.
Yeah. Great.
Okay.
And I've been told I may not have internet access, so I can't wait.
Sounds like you should go ahead then.
So I'd like to make a motion. This comes from the Litter and Waste Action Group or Working Group. The first motion is to become an affiliate of Palmetto Pride's Keep South Carolina Beautiful. And Linda Plunkett spoke with, pardon me, Sarah Lyles, who is the executive director of Palmetto Pride. And some of the things that they proposed doing for us immediately were to identify litter hotspots on the beach and on the roads. They have what is called a litter index that can help us with this assessment. And it can help us to make sure that we are providing our messaging in the best locations. So that was the first thing they offered. The second one was to make sure our trash cans are at transition points and to have signage regarding litter prevention and enforcement. They also have cameras that can be used for enforcement and they are free. Another one was to implement community cleanups biannually to encourage residents to clean up their neighborhoods. So in addition to beach sweeps, and then recognizing businesses that maintain clean property and with a monthly award. I also wanted to mention that I went to their website. They've got great educational resources, and they also, most excitingly, provide community grants. So I did a kind of a table, and I'll pass this down so you guys can take a look at that. But just very quickly, one of the ones that really caught my eye was there is a grant, it's called a Litter Task Force Grant. The purpose of this grant is to fund a part-time litter control officer. The application period is currently open. It's a rolling deadline, and they provide up to $20,000 for this award. They also have other grants listed here. One has to be applied for by law enforcement, but I'll pass this down and let you guys take a look at it. It includes the purpose of each of the grants, the application, when the application opens, the deadline for the application, as well as the dollar amount. So I'll pass one down to you this way, and Doug, I'll send one to you as well. Okay.
Right.
That's it.
Well,
She made a motion. Second.
all of that's the motion?
That's
or
it.
just the
Well,
first
that's just
part?
the background of what
For Palmetto
what
Pride.
Palmetto Pride is and what they do, and they have you've got website information here. So the motion was to become an affiliate, and this is why I think it would be important to become affiliate. I
And
probably
all
should have
these
saved
things would
that
Be included, but not in the
in the motion. Correct. The
Yes.
motion is to become an affiliate of Palmetto Pride.
Is there a cost for affiliation?
No.
No,
Cool. Sometimes there is a charge. Just ask,
Seconded
we
by
have to get
Molly.
money.
All right, very good. Discussion, no further?
I'd like to add to some of the comments Sandy made in her great presentation. These are examples, but there are so many ways that the work that Palmetto Pride does already, and it gets funded by the state, and their eagerness to help with the litter problem and to work with Isle of Palms. You may know it was an outgrowth of the Keep America Beautiful campaign. And we could have a sign if we wanted, like on the connector, Isle of Palms, Keep America Beautiful. So I think there's so many synergies and benefits without any real cost to working with them. I just guess we need approval to continue to see what they can do for us.
All good,
Yeah, sounds like a no-brainer.
yeah.
Make it into jail.
All right, if there's no further discussion, all in favor of accepting the motion, seconded? Okay.
so
Number
I had
two.
a second motion, and I can hold my supporting statement if you would like would you like for me to just read it and
Well, maybe
support it
we
at the
could-
same time?
It doesn't matter.
Okay.
Does it? We're just voting on the first part.
Okay.
person.
Okay, so the second motion is to partner with the Surfrider Foundation to provide signage and receptacles for cigarette butts. So it's related to a no smoking campaign.
Oh, I'll second.
Okay, so I've got some more information for you guys that I'll pass around and send one down to Doug as well. So the Surfrider Foundation is a national organization. There is a local chapter in Charleston. They're actually, Folly Beach is truly where they're located. And they have a campaign regarding cigarette butt litter that's called Hold Onto Your Butt. And they have, as a part of this campaign, they have developed receptacles for cigarette butts, and they've also developed signage to encourage people to dispose of their butt litter. So the canisters, each canister is kind of a black metal canister. A small one will hold 600 cigarette butts. A large 3-foot high one will hold 2,400 cigarette butts. The small canister is $99. It can be affixed to this really cool sign that I passed down for you guys to take a look at with the pelican on it. So it can be affixed to this sign for $100. So and then that can be mounted onto a sign pole or onto another fencing or wherever we may decide they would need to be. Now, I was in Florida last week at a beach in Florida and noticed that in their county park at the beach that they had these cigarette butt canisters that were the Surfrider Foundation canisters. So, they're all over the country. And so I feel like that there are opportunities for other entities on the island to partner with us, like the county park, businesses, businesses. I casually mentioned it to someone who was on the executive committee at the VFW. He felt like the VFW would be interested in purchasing one, and then having these at different points, different access paths and things like that on our beach. I went down to 25th because that's the beach access that's closest to my house. And the no smoking sign was so part of a big signboard, and it was down about the level of my knees and kind of in the lower left corner with multiple other signs. And then there was no receptacle for depositing cigarette butts. So I thought that this might be a way to really draw attention to the cigarette butt issue and provide a method for disposal. And the signage is it's not heavy-handed. I don't know how to say it a better way. It's it kind of makes you want to cooperate or makes you want to do the right thing. I do want to mention that Surfrider group out on Folly Beach has also done a really great video, and it's posted on their Surfrider Foundation webpage for the local chapter, and it is the coolest thing ever. They have also some great artwork that they've done as part of this campaign. And I spoke with a person who's responsible or in charge of the Hold On to Your Butt campaign, and they're happy to come talk to us or talk to council, or they're very excited about us being interested in this. So there is a cost associated with it, for the receptacles. But if
Who empties them?
Yeah.
Who empties the receptacles?
I don't know. I didn't ask that question, but I could find out if you want to know. I think it's there's a if you've got the kind that holds 2,400 butts, you probably wouldn't have to empty it very often, I would hope. But I don't know. I'm assuming it's part of just their litter or maintenance program.
And the cost to initially purchase is $100 for the sign, $100 for the small canister, and then you have to buy a post.
$99 for the canister, right? $100 for the sign. You could have its own individual post, or you could attach it to an existing post if there was an appropriate place to put that. If you buy the standalone container, the large canister, that is $299.
Okay.
And there's no post, but you also don't get the cool sign to go with it.
You were mentioning having a business sponsor. Is your thought that some of these signs would be funded by a business sponsor
That would be my hope,
Okay.
because having a reducing cigarette butt litter for the businesses that are located on the island, around the front beach in that area, I think would be a benefit to the business.
Yeah, one question I had is whether perhaps a business could sponsor a sign on one of the paths and maybe have their
Oh,
logo put on it.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And one of the things that the Surfrider Foundation has done on their website for the Folly Beach group, they have a list of all the businesses who have participated. So like McKelvin Surf Shop and, a lot of the different restaurants and places like that have purchased their own butt canisters and signage. And so they recognize them. So that's one of the things that we've talked about as part of our plan in terms of litter control, is recognizing people who contribute to the effort.
And the signage that these businesses bought, do they keep it at their establishment or? Okay.
So most of these that the business has bought are ones that are physically, located close to their business.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I was wondering about the possibility of ones that we have down on the stations, maybe having a business sponsor those.
I think that's a great idea.
Yeah.
And also there's litter grants over there that I was looking at earlier.
I have a comment too, that I think we all as a committee ought to consider, because a lot of things we've talked about involve signs and increased signage, and we don't want to litter our island with signs. So perhaps there's the way we can, pick up your poop, just, hold on to your butt and your dog's butt, or, whatever. All, could kind of consolidate some of the signage so that it's not litter.
Hold on to already got those signs at the beach paths that have lots of things on them. I'm just trying to think how we would
Yeah,
integrate it with that.
I was
without
kind of wondering
overdoing
the
it.
same thing,
Yeah.
the visual clutter of the beach accesses. People started
Unbelievable.
to take offense, which is the ones that you talk about that are now large with many signs on them. I wonder if just a container could be affixed to those, and, the plan is to put those big signs, just one big sign at each one with all the signs. But I don't think that sign would fit. I don't know, but on the scale, it looks like it wouldn't, but maybe the two thoughts, either just affixing the canister to those signs if it would fit. The other thought, to kind of add on to what Linda was saying, we have already the bag pooper scooper post with that sign and a dispenser for trash bags. Would it be okay to have a dual purpose sign with both on one sign to reduce the
As long as
visual clutter?
As long as people don't put the dog poop in the canister.
Oh, it's small.
good-
It's pretty small. So I think
hole's
one
about
of the
this big.
things that would be beneficial, it feels like that as more and more things are prohibited, there's a new sign for those things that are prohibited. And so I should have brought, so when I went to the 25th Beach Access, so there was that sign. And then on the other side of the access path, there was another sign about and bags for dog waste. There was a big garbage can. And then as you look down that 25th access, you could see multiple other signs that were related to various things, such as golf carts and et cetera, et cetera. So it feels like as ordinances have been passed and all that, we've done a
Sign goes
new
up.
sign, when maybe at some point we, as an island, really ought to look at all of our signage and to make sure that we're saying what we want to say and saying it the right way. And yeah,
Just sign audit.
just a sign audit.
Yes.
That's a
25th.
long-term goal.
25th is an example of one that had a sign on it, and you can see that it still has a lot of signs.
Yes,
So it's, there are a lot of competing
yes.
interests at those beach accesses.
Yes.
and each gets a sign.
So what they had at the county park that I visited in Florida was they just had a tall canister, like the little black canister that's on the page there, without the pretty sign. But I mean, it was still effective. It had the,
Maybe next to the trash.
not, it had the
A tall
tall,
canister next to the trash can.
well,
Would that do it?
I mean, it could be next to any of the signs, but the tall canister, just so people can see it. And it has that comes with stickers. So each canister comes with special stickers that you can put on it. And so that's another way to do it and to reduce the number of like signs, and you're just putting in the canister. And so that's the way they had done it at the county park that I visited.
Do you think people would object if we put this container farther down the path, not right next to the big sign with all the other stuff on it? Would it call more attention to it? And what about at County Park where there's no big sign like that? I mean, there's a path next to County Park that has the big sign with all the little things on it. But I just don't know if it would be objectionable to separate it from the big sign and put it farther down.
So what we want people to do is we have no smoking on the beach.
Yeah.
So it seems to have it right there at the beginning of the beach path would be the place that it
I
makes the
think so
most
too.
sense. And actually at I'm just thinking about 25th, but there was a place for the bags for dogs. I mean, you could put a smoking canister, the butt canister next to that, and it
Yeah,
wouldn't
that's what-
be
yeah,
terribly.
yeah. She is our head sign designer and installer.
Well, I was gonna say, like, our whole process is modernized, and then we're gonna go through each access and get rid of all the metal signs and put them consolidated, so we have a really pretty sign, and we don't have signs. So we're working our way through, we have like maybe 21 so far, we're gonna try to do each access point. Susan Smith, former council member, has, in Public Works Committee, has talked about wanting those canisters. The problem is who's gonna empty them? So we have the difficulty of getting the bags for the dogs to, supplied in there. So it's just a matter of like, I think they could be done, but it's a matter of what department is gonna be the one that emptying and we talked about adding those canisters to those green signs to do that. So we are in the process of trying to work through and clean up signs. And there is one that lists no plastic, whatever we passed a couple years ago with the plastic, and I think the dog, and so we can add things to it, we can edit those signs and move them around on the board. We wanted to make the smoking, I love dog, but we are in the process.
Okay.
We need QR.
Oh, that'd be
codes.
great. I'd love to see it. Yeah.
But it is kind of amazing.
A giant QR code.
Or woman power.
Right.
Sandy, do you have any idea how often, or is that just a question for Surfrider, how often these canisters have to be emptied?
That's a good question. And I spoke with a person who's in charge of that program, but I did not ask her that question.
Okay.
I should have, but I mean, I could find out and provide that information to Mary if that's something that, and to Douglas or Desiree or whoever would be the most appropriate person to receive that information.
Maybe you can go into your grant from this other group that's gonna pick up our litter.
Yeah.
That
Hire
person can
somebody.
pick it up. Yeah, right.
Yeah. All right, are we ready to vote on Sandy's second motion?
So the motion was to partner with Surfrider Foundation to look at how we can improve our signage and receptacles for cigarette butts.
Yeah, I mean, even if we don't get a great number of receptacles going, I think at the very least we could, have a couple or one at a station and start
Yeah.
there and see how that's
Get started.
received and
On the
yeah,
park.
yeah.
And really, I think our county park should provide the receptacles at the county park.
We could ask them, yeah.
Yeah.
All in favor, raise your hand.
Aye.
Motion passes. It looks like we have run out of time. Should we table the wildlife for the next meeting, which will be the second Thursday in March? Is that
It's
correct?
March
The
10th.
10th is
At
what was
4
on.
p.m. All right,
I'll make a motion, that we pick it up where we left off.
all right. We only have one more to do. One more group.
People, does everybody want to push through it tonight? Or not?
No,
All right, so let's do that.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, I think we did. amazingly well.
Yeah.
All right, is there a second to Doug's motion to
I'll second.
table that last
I'll second.
wildlife group? All right, Grace seconds it. All in favor, raise your hand. Okay. So that, any new business to come before the committee?
I move the meeting be adjourned.
All right, so the next meeting will be on
March the
March
10th.
the 10th at 4 p.m. Right.
Second the motion. for adjournment.
We will confirm that meeting with you. That
Okay,
typically is a budget workshop. But put it on your, plan on it, and we'll confirm.
all right, we'll,
We'll just
Usually it's
confirm.
around that time.
we'll